Like we're just bombarded with ads all over the place all the time. So like if I'm going to remember something, I need to see it a bunch. This is one of the best ways for you to identify who is in market and how can I get my impression in front of them so they remember my brand.
Well, hello and welcome to the J. Sterling Hughes Show, where we share the straight truth on how we have built our family law practice from 0 to 25 attorneys and $15 million in revenue, all in the past 10 years. And my purpose here is to document what's working and what's not working with hopes that you can take that and you can recontextualize that for your practice and shorten your success curve. My guest today is my partner and fellow co-founder, Tony Karls. Tony is currently the president of our sister company, Rocket Clicks, which is a digital ad agency serving clients and lawyers throughout the United States and a few clients worldwide. And Tony also, as you know from previous podcasts, Tony has architected our entire marketing system that we use at Sterling way back in the day when we started it, and he's developed it over the years, fine-tuned it scores of times. And we have talked about maps, we've talked about paid search, we've talked about our whole blueprint. And today, Tony's here to talk about a real integral part of our marketing strategy with our retargeting, which can be pretty complicated, but he has a way of making it simple and certainly really productive in the family law space in particular. But there's crossover to other firms and other law practice types as well. So Tony, retargeting, that's a big category, and you've developed a process for how to think about it, how to use it, how to analyze it. So what are your thoughts around retargeting?
All right. So retargeting. So this is, like you said, we talked a little bit about different channels to send traffic to the website, whether that be paid or organic traffic.
Sorry to interrupt you there, Tony, but just for the uninformed, can you just define retargeting? What is it? How does it show up? Is it the creepy stalking around the internet? All that.
Yeah, it's a little bit of that, honestly. So this is typically one of the things once you have, here's our engaged audiences that we've been able to define that are engaged with our messaging overall from like kind of super bottom of the funnel channels like paid and organic, but they don't convert. Whether they don't convert on the form or don't make a phone call, or they did make a phone call, or they did fill out the form, but they didn't go all the way through the sales process and end up buying. There's ways to nurture these people down through to the bottom of the funnel. And it's often a largely missed opportunity. Typically, the most expensive person you're going to pay for is the next new person. It is way less expensive to continue nurturing the people you've already attracted. So that's what retargeting basically is. And we'll talk a little bit about kind of breaking this down. It's really two or three big buckets, depending on how you look at it. So one is the audience. It's like identifying who these people are and how do you target them? How do you identify them? And the second is the messaging and understanding where they are in the buying cycle so that you can talk to them well. And then the third is kind of the medium, like how are you communicating with them? Is it a display ad? Is it a text ad? Is it a video? Is it interstitial in an app? Like how are you interrupting them in a way that's going to be where they are when they may not be actively shopping for you and they need a reminder, hey, you looked at us already. Why don't you continue completing your purchase so that we can service you? So we'll kind of start with the audience because that's one of the biggest, most important pieces. So there's a couple ways to think about this. So like one of the things I mentioned a few seconds ago was people that went to your site and either didn't call or didn't fill out the form.
Would that be the audience? So yeah, I'm not sure exactly how you define the word audience here. So those would be folks who come to our site and don't do anything. They don't fill out a form. They don't call us.
A lot of different things. So one way you can identify an audience is people that didn't convert on the website. That's what I'm going to talk about first.
Okay.
Another audience is people that did convert, but they didn't purchase all the way. Like they didn't complete. Maybe they called, they talked to your sales rep, and they said, I don't know if I'm ready to move forward yet. Let me think about it. Or I'm not ready to buy today. Let me think about it. Or yes, schedule me for a consultation in the law firm space. You schedule the consultation. You give them here's what it looks like to move forward, but they didn't move forward. That's a different audience. So there's ways to target all of these different people. And one of the biggest things to understand is understand your data, what data you're capturing and how to segment. So if you can segment your data and understand it, your likelihood for setting up custom audiences along the journey is significantly more greatly enhanced. So we start with like the one way up in the funnel, people that came to the site that didn't convert or didn't make a phone call or didn't fill out the web form, didn't convert. Another way to say that. There are conversion paths on every website that exists that if they did a certain number of actions on every site and in every industry, they're slightly different. But you're going to develop these patterns using Google Analytics or whatever analytics software you're using, where you can see when these things are true, these people are indicating that they are potential buyers. Because everybody else that did this also did these 6 or 7 actions, and then they did make a phone call or they did fill out a form. So the ones that do these things but don't do that next action, we want them on our list. If that makes sense.
Right. Okay.
They're our audience. Yeah, they would be part of an audience. We can then tag them on their computer, or whether
is that a cookie when you say tag them on the computer?
Yeah,
that's a cookie, right?
Cookie them or pixel them on whatever device they're using, and then use that in different platforms, whether that's Google or Meta or StackAdapt or Simplify or TikTok or LinkedIn, or all of these different platforms have these. You can then target them on these platforms when they are not actively searching for you. And these are people that are already engaged.
So in simple terms, our prospective client comes to our site. They don't do anything. We pixel their computer or their iPhone or whatever. And then later on, they open up LinkedIn or they open up Facebook. We then can show our ad to them there. That's what we've selected, that particular person as audience. So if they do a lot on our site, they may be in a different audience category than if they just did look around, for example. They didn't do anything else.
If they navigate to certain pages on our site, it's what are they navigating to tools? Are they looking at different attorneys? Are they looking at a location page? If they're checking a bunch of these different boxes and they don't move forward, we know that this pattern suggests that they're ready to purchase at some point. So like we already bought them to get them here, whether it purchased them through labor on SEO or purchased them through like literal dollars in paid media. We want to continue nurturing this person through the funnel. The mistakes are just retargeting everybody on your website. That's typically not a good strategy. A lot of the times when people say retargeting doesn't work, it's because their audience selects were really poor, and they're going to mix together every visitor, which is also going to include the people that converted, and they're not going to do exclusions and make sure that the list they're targeting is clean. So identifying that pattern is really important, because right now you're kind of doing a predictive data mining exercise where you're seeing the pattern of here is what a user that converts looks like. So what about the users that do this, that don't visit the final page? What do they look like? So that would be an example of an audience that doesn't convert. An example of an audience that does convert is essentially from your CRM. So they call you and they talk to someone on the intake team. So what's really important here is how do you set up your CRM system so that you're capturing all of the data that you need. So this is why you're making sure the different services that you offer are clear and documented in your CRM and not in a text box. Because as a marketer, what is really inefficient is you sending me a big file that has a whole bunch of random text in it. One might say looking for a divorce, another might say looking for child support, another might say criminal defense, personal injury. Those are all different data points that one by one would have to be segmented. And you're going to need lots of people on your list to go target them. Setting up your data so it's consumable and usable in the future is really important. This is one of the big areas where CRM retargeting falls apart, is the CRM is set up poorly. So basically everyone in the CRM is a potential person to get to target, even though the reality is like the quality is very different. If that kind of makes sense. Yeah. So how you set up your data in your CRM is really important, not only with like customer status as it's going through, but also like what is the detail underneath that that's very consumable. So what we look for when we do this in our CRM is we're looking for leads that are unconverted. They didn't go through to be scheduled for a consultation, and they are looking for one of our services, and they have a certain lead score. We can then take that list and we can push it into the different platforms. And the list that we're talking about is we require our agents in our intake team to make sure they're getting the email, they're getting the phone number, and they're getting the actual address.
So backing up a bit, you talked about lead scoring for leads that are in our CRM, so our client relations management tool. Once a lead's in there that has not scheduled for a consult, maybe they've called us, we've harvested the information, we've talked to the potential client, but they're still not ready to do anything. We then would retarget to them based on a scoring system that we've developed to determine if they're A, B, or C, for example. A being like high intensity, probably ready to move forward, ability to pay and so forth, down to C, which would be more distant from that.
Correct.
Is that correct? Okay. And you'll retarget differently to each of those scores.
No, we don't retarget to all of them, but we use that to, if we had an unlimited budget, yeah, potentially, but that's that's not reality. So we have to make strategic decisions. Where do we want to target, and like where's our budget? And retargeting is typically one of the best opportunities from a marketing perspective to leverage, because you're just nurturing people down through the funnel versus like buying a new person to push them in, which is way more expensive. So we're going to use that. And what's really important is we're collecting data well, not only in like classifying them in the system, whether that's where they are in the sales status or what types of services they want to buy and all the things that we need or you might need to score your leads so that you know the quality of them. But also like getting accurate phone numbers, getting accurate emails, and getting accurate addresses, because all three of those things you can push into different platforms to then go use your first-party data that you've purchased. You've purchased all of this. You can use that in these different platforms to then go and retarget specifically to their devices versus everybody in a metro. This is why retargeting is really effective, because you're doing device to by device targeting, not anybody that's in Milwaukee or anybody that's in Los Angeles or anybody that's in a particular geography. Where's the guy that has this device? That's who we want to target, because they meet our criteria.
Very laser target.
Yeah, so it's not super expensive. And if you set this up right, it's very effective. Ideally, to make a purchase decision, typically it takes between like 20 and 30 impressions in the marketplace. The average consumer on any given day is going to see about 10,000 different ads, whether it's different brands or just different things that are in their office. Like I got a Home Depot bucket where I put my chalk for working out in my office right here. Like we're just bombarded with ads all over the place all the time. So like if I'm going to remember something, I need to see it a bunch. This is one of the best ways for you to identify who is in market and how can I get my impression in front of them so they remember my brand, because that's what's going to help drive through the funnel. So audience is really important. It's the most important piece of this, to get your audience identified and target them. If you can get the audience identified and capture the data that allows you to access them on these platforms, whether that's your socials or using Google Display Network or using more advanced third-party applications like Stack, Adapt, and Simplify, that will then allow you to go target their devices on all of their specific places.
How long did it take for you to develop our primary audience for Sterling Lawyers? What was the process you went through to do that for us?
Having a base set of data and if your site is set up and you understand your conversion path on your site, that's the first part, is like, do you have it set up with Google Analytics? Are you capturing the different events that are occurring while people are visiting on your site? And like getting a statistically relevant data set sample size. So typically you're going to want to see a couple hundred conversions so you can see like this data flow through, then you can start identifying it.
Right.
Whatever that timeline looks like for you, that's what would be required. So is it set up correct is question one. Once you know it is.
So a conversion could be filling out a form. It could be calling. It could be some other action. It doesn't have to be necessarily hiring.
Correct. It's like getting into the call.
So someone in a smaller firm with a lower amount of flow, it may take 6 months or so to get enough data, but that's really valuable once you collected all that. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, one of the ways that I talk with JP about marketing is revenue is a byproduct of good marketing, because actually what we're doing is we're buying data. We are efficiently buying data, and if we're really good at it, revenue comes. If we're really bad at it, revenue doesn't come, and you just pissed away money. So hopefully you got a lot of learnings so that you didn't waste a lot of money and you repeat the same mistakes. But like what you're really doing when you're doing marketing is you're buying data. Like, and if you kind of get your head in that mindset and understand that, every single thing you do is intentional and you're learning every time that you do.
You also mentioned setting the site up. I'm not a tech guy, and that feels overwhelming to me because I don't even know the first thing about that. But from a standpoint of actually doing it, an agency or whoever's doing the marketing for a law firm, that's pretty easy to do, to set all those pixels up and tracking mechanisms. Okay, so it's not that difficult to do.
It's not that difficult. You're watching the events and then you're setting up different event tags, and you're just like, it would be for me if I, was going through a divorce myself. I would not want to do it myself. Like, I'm smart enough, I could probably figure it out, but I would want to hire a lawyer because I'm sure I'll screw it up and then I'll be really upset about it. It's very similar. So simple to learn if you want to invest the time, but not something to do willy-nilly. So that's audience. Audience is really important. If you do your audience well, retargeting works amazingly. Second is really understanding where do you want to place these. So the way that we think about it is, where are eyeballs when you're not at the workplace? Because typically one of our criteria for qualifying is like ability to pay. Typically people that have the ability to pay they're at work during the day, which means I need to be where they are when they're not at work, because we get a high volume of calls that come in early in the morning, really falls off. Then at noon, when everybody's doing lunch, we get more calls. tapers off towards the end of the day. And then they're still on their phone. If you've ever heard of a term called death scrolling, lots of people do that at night. I saw a recent study that said there's a lot of my generation isn't even watching shows anymore. They are scrolling with their spouses, just watching reels. So like, how are you getting in front of them is the right question. Because you still can, because you're not gonna do a broadcast TV commercial. It's way too expensive, and you can't do that with retargeting. But with retargeting, you can get in front of all these people. So understanding the medium, like where are the eyeballs when they're not engaged actively in searching for a service to solve their problem is the answer. It's typically going to be on socials. It's going to be on CTV and OTT. So those are connected TV and over-the-top television, and you can get in front of those. So if you have like a Samsung TV and like there's like 2,000 channels of random stuff, Fail Army and No Deal or No Deal, or basically every show that you could possibly think of, they have their own channel. There's commercials on those channels. This is where I can put the ads. So these are all opportunities because they just run and people watch them, and then there's where the ad shows up. Or they're on YouTube. You can put the ads on YouTube. You need an email address. We can target the TV by having the physical home address, and we're not targeting the neighborhood, we're targeting that house. So there's a lot of opportunity here if you set it up right, and if you understand where you're going to place it, you can then understand what type of messaging and media assets, whether those are 6, 15, and 30-second videos for all the different video platforms, sizing of your different display ads, and then what's your go-to message based on where they are in the funnel. So the non-converters, what are we saying to the non-converters? The people that did convert, that didn't go all the way through though, what are we saying to them? So on and so forth. Because each of these are like, they're in a different phase of the journey. And how are we making sure, A, we're getting the brand in front of them, B, they know what we do, and C, we say something compelling to like move them forward and not overcomplicate it at the same time. That's what's required. So if we try to do too much in an ad, which we see all the time, basically dilute the message, because like, I don't know what I just saw, that was 6 seconds, and you try to tell me 9 things in 6 seconds, it doesn't work. Just show me the brand.
It's real simple. You're looking for one action, and so everything is geared toward that, taking the next step. Not totally informing and everything you need to know about a case, but
what you're really trying to do is like, if you just think about if you need 30 impressions to help people remember you, like get the brand in front of them. Just get the brand in front of them, and don't say something that's going to turn them off. Like, how are you? Get the brand in front of them. If they can then take that brand and say, all right, Sterling Lawyers does divorce. Sterling Lawyers does divorce, and they care about people. Okay, check it out. I'm not doing anything cute. I'm not trying to be cutesy, and I'm not trying to do all this stuff. It's like, how can I do these simple things to get them to remember?
Don't be greedy, really. Don't be greedy with trying to get too much done.
Exactly. So
slow it down.
Yeah. So that's really what it boils down to, is like audience, understand the medium so that you understand the asset types that you're going to need, and then get the messaging right. And those are kind of your big 3 buckets.
Yeah.
It's not as complicated as it's like, there's a lot of details here, but it starts with the list. It all starts with the list.
Yeah. So we're not selling shoes or a physical product. So there are some different rules around divorce, right? So Google treats that differently. Can you explain a little bit some of the challenges? As
Google puts people that do divorce in a personal protected category, which basically means Google platforms, we don't get to use most of the Google tools. So what that means is like, we've actually had to learn how to do this. Or a lot of people that sell shoes, like they just like do the simple thing and like just turn it on in Google. If you're doing a professional service in our category, like you really need to partner with somebody that understands this stuff, because you don't get the easy Google button. Just turn it on. Like that's not a reality for you, because there's different categories that are in personal hardship. So then what you need to do is like, you need first party data. You need to capture that. And then you need to know how to leverage it after you categorize it, so that you can go to these platforms and say, here's a list of email addresses I have. Here's the message I want to send to them. You're now compliant with Google. Here's the addresses I have. Here's the message I want to send to them. You're now compliant with Google, because you're not using Google services to stalk people. You've done all of the work. You haven't like piggybacked on them. So like that data capture part is really important. That's why I spent some time talking about that. And it seems like I went over really fast. The data is the most important piece, because if you don't have that, depending on your category, you might get shoved out.
Yeah. Cool. Thank you, Tony. This has been really enlightening. Anything else that I haven't asked you that you think our audience would benefit from knowing about retargeting?
No, I don't think so. This is on our roadmap. Depending on the client, this is the second or third most profitable area. So, and it's typically overlooked tremendously. just leave you with that.
So from just to give our audience a context around that, approximately, I know this is a guess because there's so many factors that play into this, but approximately how many of our new funded agreements come from some form of retargeting, or they've been on an audience list for retargeting?
I would say greater than 40% are engaged with our retargeting.
Oh my goodness.
It's a large bucket, and it drives the cost down. Like, if why do we have so many leads? Like, that's why. Like, we know how to like leverage this. As we've been trying to like move the needle down in terms of like get just-in-time scheduling implemented with our attorneys and call center, this will be the last thing that we touched.
Yeah, because man, okay, cool. All right. Well, thank you once again. Really appreciate you coming on and just kind of laying bare, really, our retargeting strategy. You've put it all together for us. And I know you do that for other law firms as well. So if anyone's out there looking, that's listening to the podcast, give Tony a reach out or connect with me, and I'll connect you with Tony. So he knows a lot about this stuff. He's built it over the last 10 years.
Awesome. Well, thank you. Appreciate it.
All right. Thanks.